All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in Sharpening the Edge as we have the hype video, the drone flying down the tunnel through Michigan Stadium. And, man, I didn't know they had those LED screens by the press box or by those. But, man, the stadium with the big scoreboards. Lucas Reimink from the Maize and Blue Review joining me as we get ready to pick some games in a moment or two. How's the stadium look to you as we fly through there, coming right down there? How's it look, Lucas?
Looks pretty cool. Yeah, I was at the game last week, so I didn't get the chance to see the lights because it was like a 3:30 game. They had the lights on, but you couldn't really tell because it was still pretty sunny out. So, but yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the new lights look and what's changed, I guess. The scoreboard's way bigger. I don't know if you've been there to see it yet, but it is way bigger.
I did see a guy with his pregnant wife last year outside the stadium, and they took a picture with the scoreboard behind them, and then they had their baby, and then they took another picture in the exact same spot with the scoreboard, and they're like, yeah, everything's a lot bigger. So is our family. I was like, yeah, you could see it. So, yeah, you could tell. Things, that's why they, one of the reasons people like how things look at night. I mean, that's why it's just for years you'd watch the SEC and you're like, oh my gosh, Death Valley, look at how great it looks. And, now Michigan takes part in it. Now, Michigan Notre Dame, a little bit different than Michigan BG, but nonetheless, I mean, it's still cool. And, if you like tailgating, I mean, I don't know. I like tailgating, getting another 4, 5, 6, 7 hours of tailgating. You can't go wrong.
Absolutely.
Hey, it sounds like you're into it right now. If you're joining us for the first time, we have 9 different units for you. We picked the Michigan State, and the Detroit Lions game. We'll throw 3 best bets your way, a prop, a parlay, and a lock of the week. Now, best bets and lock of the week are kind of the same thing. I mean, your lock and your best bets. But if you were just looking at my best bet, you'd say, boy, you're doing a good job. 4 of 6 on the season. Nice job. But then you see that I've missed my 2 locks, which makes it even right now, which actually makes you a little bit down if you're just going off those bets and locks. But how have you been doing? How do you feel about your selections?
Exactly 500 now. It was 3 and 4 last week. So, yeah, not great. Not terrible. Could be worse. I started out last year terrible, so this is a better start than last year, but don't feel great. Hopefully we'll get back on the right track here soon.
Well, there you go. It starts with this week, and we've got the Michigan State, and Lions games to pick. We'll start out. Let's get it going. Michigan minus 39.5 in this game. They haven't covered one yet, and I don't think they're going to cover this one. I've got Michigan 48-13, so I'll take BG in the points. I do think if it came down where Michigan was up by 35 and they had the ball in the final minute down on the Bowling Green 1, you'd say, would Jim Harbaugh run it in? And I think at that point, he might take a knee because of the connections with Bowling Green, his dad coaching there, Scott Loeffler, Soup Campbell, Morrison. I think he might. People say, oh, he's going to call the dogs off. That's the instance I think he would call the dogs off. So, it might not hurt if you're in a situation to have Michigan there, to have Bowling Green and the points. But I think 39.5, even though BG's not all that good of a team, I do think 48-13. I'll take those points.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I just saw it at 40.5 actually, so I'll take all those 40.5 points. For a lot of the same reasons that you said. Michigan hasn't covered yet, and the spread still has gone up from the previous games. It was 35.5 and 36.5. Now it's 40.5, and they still haven't covered. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. I mean, I understand it because Michigan should be the heavy favorite in this game, but like you talked about, there's a lot of connections between these 2 schools. Jack Harbaugh was there. Their current head coach, Scott Loeffler, a UM alum, former player. I was kind of like you're talking about mutual respect, friendship between the two coaching staffs. They still keep in contact with each other. So I don't think Michigan's going to run it up on them intentionally. If it gets out of hand, that's probably how you lose this game. Is it's like 45-0 is probably how you lose this bet. But I don't see that happening. I think Michigan will keep it nice and respectable, like 42-7, 42-3, something like that. So that's what I'll go with. I'm with you.
All right. We both have BG and that big amount of points. So Michigan State welcomes in Washington, and you have to give up 16 points in this one. I think Washington's going to be able to cover. I like the Huskies 38-17. It's a fabulous passing attack. And Michael Penix, from the first time that I saw him at Indiana, I said, this guy's got an NFL arm. This guy's going to be in the NFL one day. I was surprised that he took a step back with the Hoosiers, but since he's been at Washington, he looks like that same NFL type caliber guy. He's got outstanding receivers. It's a good coach. This Washington team, I think, along with USC, everybody talks about the Pac-12 being undefeated, and for good reason. I mean, there's a lot of good quarterbacks out there, but Penix is the best, along with Caleb Williams at USC. So I just think that they'll outlast. I don't think State has enough firepower. 38-17, Washington by 21. I'll lay to 16.
Yeah, my first inclination was with you. I don't know. It's just I kind of have a weird feeling about this game with like the whole Mel Tucker situation. Like, how is this Michigan State team going to respond? Nobody except the people in that locker room really know how that's going to go. Is this a place where they like all rally together to kind of like fight hard for the interim kind of thing? Or is this like our coach is gone, we know our time is probably limited here anyways, like we're just going to mail it in? I have no idea how that's going to go. So I don't really feel comfortable placing a bet on the spread, mostly for that reason. So I will go with the over 55.5. Like you talked about, Michael Penix and Washington bring in one of the best offenses in the country, particularly throwing the ball. They have 3 NFL receivers on their roster right now, and Michigan State struggled to put together competent secondary in like 3 or 4 years probably. So on paper, it does seem like Washington could cover, but I just can't quite pull the trigger just based on how Michigan State will respond. I just don't know. Both defenses do have question marks, particularly both secondaries. Both have question marks, which is kind of interesting. But I think Washington will probably win this game. I'm not quite comfortable doing the spread. And then Michigan State on offense, they've actually looked pretty good, but they haven't really played a defense with a pulse. Noah Kim has looked pretty good. They took a transfer running back from UConn, Nathan Carter, who's a good player. Washington front seven's like okay. It's the strength of their defense. It's not really anything special. So I think both teams will be able to put up points here. I'll take the over 55.5.
Over 55.5. I can't access your private chat and put it up on the screen for some reason. That's the first time we've tried that. I didn't know. So you'd have to put it straight up in the comments if I was going to be able to put it up on the screen. Let's go to the Lions game. Lions won outright against the Chiefs. They bring in Seattle, the Seahawks, who did not look good last week against the Rams. I do go back to last year where this was a complete shootout. I also am thinking about last night where Minnesota was able to use that 6.5. And even though they didn't play really well, they ended up covering that game. 5.5, a big number. That's what the Lions are favored by. I say all that. I'm still taking the Lions. I think that they're going to win this one by 8. I've got them at 35-27. Seattle, I know they made the playoffs last year and you start in a hole like they did, but they just didn't look good, especially on the defensive side. I just think the Lions will be able to put up too many points on the Seahawks, and that's why I'm going to lay the 5.5. But that's an awful big number.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought at 4.5, so I'll lay the points to you there. These two teams played last year. They exploded for a lot of points. I don't know. I was kind of having a hard time deciding what to do on this game. I didn't really want to take the Lions side, but I saw the line and kind of just thinking about both teams. I have a lot more questions about Seattle than I do Detroit. That's not something you'd typically say, especially with the Lions' history, and the Seahawks have been quite good in recent years. But just looking at the matchup individually, Seahawks O-line's pretty banged up. Both starting tackles sounds like are not going to be a go for Seattle in this game. One of them's quite good. So I think the drop off there between both their starting tackles to both of their second string tackles will probably be pretty drastic. Aiden Hutchinson's all over the field last week. I think he'll have another really good game here. And then the Lions secondary was kind of my biggest question mark about them coming into the year. Uh, they're not perfect, but they definitely look better last week than they were playing for most of the year last year. So I'm kind of buying into that improvement. On the defensive side, I've always liked their offense since early last year. So I think they'll be able to cover the spread as well.
All right. We both like the Lions. All right. That gets us down to our best bets. And I'll go first. I have 3 of them for you, and I'll put them up on the screen for you. You'll be able to take a look at them. I have been taking Colorado. I took them their first game against TCU. I took them last week against Nebraska. So I'm 2-0 taking the Buffaloes. I'm going to keep riding that Dion train. I'm going to go to Saturday night, and I'm going to take Colorado minus 23, especially now that it's personal again, that the Colorado State coach, Norvell, ran his mouth a little bit at Dion. That ticked off his son and ticked off Dion. So if they can, and I think they will be able to run up the score, I think they'll run it up totally on the Rams. So I'll take Colorado minus 23. Indiana plus 10.5. You know, Jalen Lucas is an All-American return man. Played well against Ohio State. I watched a lot of Indiana against Ohio State. They were able to really deal well with the Buckeyes wide receivers. Those are the best wide receivers in the country. I think they'll be able to hold up against Louisville. I know Jeff Brom is, coming in with Louisville at Lucas Oil and all that, but the Hoosiers getting 10.5 points. I think they're going to win the game outright. I'm going to take the Hoosiers plus 10.5 against Louisville. And then Penn State, this is a big number, minus 14.5 against Illinois. But Illinois look terrible on both sides of the ball. I looked at their running game last week, and they can't stop the run. Penn State, I think, is going to kill them. I'll put the score like 30-10, but I'll gladly lay the 14.5. Colorado minus 23, Indiana plus 10.5. Penn State minus 14.5. Go ahead, shoot some holes in those.
Sure. So I'll start with the one we agree on. It's Penn State 14.5. I'm right there with you on that one. Illinois didn't look very good. They lost last week. They were playing Kansas. The secondary for Illinois in particular, they had a lot of guys leave now in the NFL the last couple of years. Their defensive coordinator went to take the job at Purdue. And there's been a little bit of drop off there, a little bit more than I was kind of expecting it to be. It's early on in the year, so this is something that's fixable. But I think this is a bad time to play the Penn State team that has the weapons out at receiver and Drew Aller, however you want to say it, to get them the ball. Aller, there we go. And so then on the other side, Penn State's defense, I think it's one of the best in the country. Illinois is typically a good running team, but we haven't really seen that develop for them so far this year. So I think Penn State will control this game and kind of take off with it towards the end. And then I will go type my next one in here. I'm going to take the Florida Gators plus 6 at home against Tennessee. This was one of the more interesting games of the weekend to me. It's not like the biggest slate you've ever seen. But I really like this game in particular. I think it's pretty interesting. I have this game at Florida plus 2 based on power ratings I've seen and the ones I've done myself. And that kind of crosses a key number there, but between 6 and 3 there. So I like that. Joe Milton's been pretty erratic for Tennessee so far this year. He's very hot and cold. Like at times he looks like he's the best quarterback in the country, and then at times he's like, how is this dude starting? I don't really trust him to be able to go on the road and cover a touchdown spread on the road in the swamp. I think Florida has improved significantly since their first game against Utah. I think they've kind of got some things figured out, particularly on the offensive line. I think they're going to run the ball semi-effectively against Tennessee. That'll keep the pressure off Graham Mertz. And I think this game is going to be more of a low-scoring, kind of fight it out type of game. And that's how Florida wants it to be, because if it gets into a shootout, Tennessee will definitely come away with it there. And then for my last one, it is Maryland minus 14.5 against Virginia. A few reasons I like this one. So far, UVA is 0-2. They've lost to Tennessee. They got blown out, and then they lost to James Madison last week. It was either overtime or it was a close game in the fourth quarter. And then Tulia is a very dynamic quarterback when he doesn't turn the ball over. UVA's secondary so far hasn't picked off a pass this year. That makes me think that that can continue, that he can continue to play clean football, not turn the ball over to the other team. And I think Maryland's a way better team and kind of a dangerous team when Talia's doing that. So I think they'll win by at least 17 here. So I'll take it as long as it's under that number.
All right. To recap, you like Penn State. You agree with me, minus 14.5. They are at Illinois. You like Florida in the Swamp. That's their home stadium. They'll bring in Joe Milton and Tennessee. You'll gladly take the 6 points. And Maryland, Virginia, the two old ACC rivals going at it. You'll take the Terps minus 14.5. I like that one as well. That was a strong play that I was looking at. So I'm going to throw you a prop and a parlay. I'm going for my prop back to that Penn State Illinois game. Nick Singleton, if he scores 2 touchdowns, you can get him at plus 230. Penn State's going to bludgeon him in the running game. I think 2 touchdowns at plus 230. That sounds like a good number to me. I am going to take it. And for a parlay, normally I look at parlays and I think, hey, what kind of underdogs can I pick to put in a parlay to boost these numbers up? And then it occurs to me when you're doing parlays, you want to have fun too. And I'm just having fun with this. I am going with a directional parlay, the Fithian directional trifecta. I am taking all of the directional schools tomorrow and the points. Central getting 34.5 at Notre Dame. I'm taking Eastern Michigan minus 7. They're bringing in UMass. More on that game coming up. And I'll take Western Michigan as they go to Iowa. 28.5 for the Broncos. So Central, Eastern, and Western, it's the Fithian directional trifecta. You get plus 595, and you get all those points when you're talking about Central and Western. That's why I'm going that direction. I feel pretty good about that one. That's why I took it to the window. You got a parlay?
Not bad. That's pretty interesting. Right. Yep. I am. I did like kind of almost the opposite of you. My 6-team money line parlay here, all favorites. So I'm gonna go with a couple of them I already talked about. So I'll just cover those briefly. Maryland to beat Virginia. I think Virginia is really bad, particularly on offense. I'm kind of fading the team as a whole. I don't believe the Vegas odds markets have fully caught on to how bad Virginia is yet. So I think Maryland will be able to at least win that game. I picked them to cover as well. I took Penn State to beat Illinois. Kind of talked about that one already. The secondary for Illinois is kind of questionable. It's been a little bit worse than I expected. Doesn't really help that they played Penn State this early in the season. And then Duke and Northwestern are playing. I'm taking Duke to beat Northwestern. Riley Leonard is a pretty good quarterback for Duke. He's a guy that I kind of heard through the rumor mill that there were some rumors that other teams were trying to get him to transfer to their school in the offseason, and probably will continue this next year. And then Northwestern on the other side, they're just not very good. I just don't think Northwestern's going to be able to keep up with Duke. I think Duke is quite a good team, like top 3 or 4 in the ACC, and Northwestern is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. So I don't think they'll have a problem winning that one. Tulane to beat Southern Miss. I'll talk more about this game in a little bit. But I think Tulane is one of the best teams in the group of 5. They played Ole Miss tough last week. It's a big step down here in competition between Ole Miss and then playing Southern Miss. So I think they'll be able to wrap that one up pretty easily. And then Washington to beat MSU. Like I said, it doesn't really feel comfortable picking the spread, but I do think they'll win the game. I just don't think MSU is going to have enough weapons to keep up, although I do think both teams will be able to score. And then Ole Miss to beat for Georgia Tech. Ole Miss talked about it a little bit already. They played Tulane last week. They have a pretty good offense. They look quite good. Jackson Dart, their quarterback, has shown a lot of improvement from where he was last year. And then George Tech on the other side, I don't know. They've been a very low-level program in the ACC there for the last few years. I just don't see that changing anytime soon, particularly when they play a pretty good Ole Miss team this week. So I think Ole Miss will be able to wrap that one up. Combine all those 6 teams, and it's plus 102. Might have changed a little bit, but plus 102 is the number that I locked it in for. So that's what I'm going to go for my parlay this week. And then my prop, I'm going to go to the Michigan game. I'm just going to go Blake Corum over 88.5 rushing yards. So a little interesting stat I heard and seen on X, Twitter, or whatever. This week they have not had a 100-yard rusher yet for Michigan, and it's only been 2 games. They've neither back has played the entire game yet, so it's not like sound alarms. They haven't had a 100-yard rusher or anything. But I think Michigan is cognizant of that. I think they're aware of that. I think they're going to want to work on the running game specifically to get it ready for Big Ten play next week. So I think Blake Corum will have a pretty good day on the ground. I think he'll have a couple 10 to 15-yard runs, and he'll clear the 100-yard mark. So I'll take him to go over that 88.5 for the prop.
I think that sounds like a great one. You're right. They definitely are going to have to work on the running, or want to work on the running game. And coming off that injury and not really hitting them, putting them through the paces in fall camp, they're working them up. I would not be surprised to see both of those guys get 100 yards. So I like that one. I might have to go back now and make some other picks, but that's a good one with Blake Corum. All right, that just leaves us with our lock of the week. I'll let you bring the hammer. I am going to go to Ryerson Stadium. I've already put them in the directional trifecta. Eastern Michigan is -7 against UMass. UMass took on Miami of Ohio last week, and the Redhawks were able to throw up over 40 points. I think EMU has a better offense than Miami of Ohio. I think they have a better defense, too. I think they're a better team. I think they'll cover this 7 easily. I was thinking this one would be like 10, 11, 12 and a half. So I'll gladly lay the 7 on that old gray field in Ypsilanti. Give me EMU -7 for my lock of the week.
Wow, picking against the fighting Don Browns, huh? Yeah, I already talked about it a little bit, foreshadowed. I'm going to take Tulane as my lock of the week. They're at 11.5. I watched a little bit of their Ole Miss game they were playing last week. They had their backup quarterback actually who I had to play. And they played Ole Miss tough, like I talked about. And then Southern Miss on the other side, I was looking up their stats and kind of what they've done so far this year. They beat Alcorn State in week 1 and then got blasted by Florida State in week 2. But in particular, their rushing totals are kind of what jumped out to me when I was looking through the box scores. They only had 3.8 yards per carry against Alcorn and had 3.6 against Florida State. Second one's kind of understandable, but the first one's kind of a red flag to me. If you have trouble running the ball against Alcorn State, I just have a hard time seeing you be able to keep up with a team who I think is pretty good. And Tulane, then Tulane's defense, they held Quinshawn Judkins, one of the best running backs in the country. Last week, he only had 48 yards on 18 attempts playing against this Tulane front 7. So I think they'll be able to shut down the Southern Miss run game, put a lot of pressure on Southern Miss quarterback Billy Wiles. And I don't think they're going to beat them by 50 like Florida State did, but I think they'll be able to cover this 2-touchdown spread. So I'll take that. I think that'll be a pretty easy one. So
the Green Wave -11.5. All right. We've got all day, and then we have to wait, though, till 7:30, but then we can stay up late as well because you got Colorado and Colorado State. That's a 10 o'clock game. It could stay an ugly slate, but I think it's going to keep you entertained all throughout the evening. And plus, you got to have something to do, waiting for 7:30. Lucas, great job. Always fun to talk with you, and I look forward to doing it next week here on Sharpening the Edge.
Absolutely. The early preview next week, the slate looks really enticing. So that should be a fun, a lot of good matchups to look into. So that'll be a fun one.
A tease to week 4. I love it. Everyone, good luck.